Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Shop Direct. This is where I work. Not only is it incredibly innovative and there's fantastic new things happening all the time, but this place is filled with amazing, amazing people. Today I have a very special video for you to celebrate my first YouTube milestone of 100 subscribers and to say thank you to all of you for your constant support. I want to introduce you to one of those amazing people I was talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you an interview with an Android developer. Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben and welcome back to the channel. This video is a celebration of hitting my first YouTube milestone of 100 subs. Yeah! Woo! And of course I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for your constant support, feedback and help. And of course for watching my crap. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce you to a colleague, a friend and of course a mentor, Mr. Graham Bryan. Hi Graham.
Hi Ben.
So Graham, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Graham, as you know. I am an Android developer, which is why I'm here. I've been doing it, oh dear God, I should have calculated this, 15-ish years now being a general developer, and I've been doing Android development specifically for about 8 years.
Okay, I was going to say Android development for 15 years.
Yeah, that would have just been a
we were back at the start of it, right?
Yeah. No, pre-Android, right? I'm trying to think what year we're in now.
And what were you doing before Android development then? What was...
Ooh, so journey back, Android, iOS, a lot of like native Java, and then into Flash, Flex, ActionScript, that kind of stuff.
Flash?
Yes, coming out the back end of a games development degree.
So how did you actually get into Android development then? What was your journey from all of that wonderful stuff, including Flash, to Android?
I was doing some Apple development, iOS, mainly because Apple killed Flash.
Apple killed Flash?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about this at all.
So obviously Flash was a legitimate option for making interactive web content. Apple came along, rise of the smartphone, they led the way. They just basically went, yeah, no Flash on our devices. And just refused to support it. Wow. Which was a good choice, you know. It's just like it was not a great platform in terms of performance, stuff like that. It probably would have been a big call to do it. They're just like, nah, you're not doing that. HTML5 was kind of on the horizon then anyway, so there was more legitimate options for doing more interesting content on the web. And they just clamped down on it. And literally, yeah, in the space of about 2 or 3 years, just like Flash just buckled, basically.
Am I right in thinking that Flash is the thing that was like, oh, you need this Flash plugin to be able to do anything?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
So cool. If you think like early 2000s, stuff like that, like Flash was just everywhere.
Yeah.
It was, to us, it won't get too much into Flash, but it was legitimately a nice platform to work with. Anyway, so they'd put the end to that. I thought, well, I'm going to have to get on board with this. This is the next big thing. I did some iOS development for a little while and got some... Basically, it was financial options. There was a hell of a lot of Apple developers out there, you know, doing a hell of a lot of work.
Like job opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. And then Android came along and just wasn't, especially the first few generations, wasn't as sexy as Apple and iOS. Yeah. So there was more job opportunities to go for. It was paying better because there was less skill set in that area. So I was like, I'll give this a try.
Cool.
And I genuinely preferred the development environment of Android over iOS, like just in general terms. So I'm not a mad fan of Objective-C. The tool sets for Android were terrible early on, but they have vastly improved, where Xcode's been much more of a trickle-based improvement, I think, whereas Android, you've had some like huge leaps that have been really interesting to be part of.
So actually on that note then, you're saying the development environment, it makes me think of IDEs. What actually was back in the start of Android?
Eclipse with plugins.
Okay.
And anyone that has done some Android development, especially back then, would know the nightmare and the headache that it was getting Android working nicely in Eclipse.
Why?
Just because it's all like plugins, third-party plugins, like different extensions and stuff for doing all different things. Huge setup for setting up your environment variables, or your paths, all that kind of stuff. Okay. It was just not easy. Sorry, very tricky.
Wow. Okay. So, what is the best thing about Android development?
Right now, Kotlin.
Kotlin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Changes from time to time. To be honest, I find the application lifecycle quite interesting in Android. It's probably not the best thing. It's definitely a thing that differentiates it from Apple development. And it feels that you're a lot more in touch with like the bare bones of what's going on. And it's an interesting way of approaching it. So I've always found that quite engaging. I think some of the times the the flexibility that Android has always been quite good. There has been like historically 2 or 3 ways of getting most things done.
Yeah.
To varying degrees, various pros and cons depending on what you want to do. But to be honest, at the moment, the most interesting part of being an Android developer for me is Kotlin and the Jetpack library APIs and stuff. Google's finally said, okay, we're going to prescribe our way of doing things. This is some tools to do that. And there's some really interesting tools coming out of that.
Awesome. I've got 2 questions off the back of that then. Kotlin, why Kotlin? What's so good about it?
So I think when you've been working in any area for quite some time, like it can get a bit stale and repetitive. I think so. Anything that comes in and mixes that up a little bit is engaging as a developer. And I think Kotlin is just so much nicer to work with than Java.
Right.
So yeah, the fact that it's something new and interesting and like powerful to use, and the fact it's a much nicer experience to use as well. It's a bit of a double whammy for me. So yeah, it's really reinvigorated my interest in the platform.
Right on. And it's a lot more, I'm going to screw this word up, but idiomatic, isn't it? It's a lot easier to read.
It is definitely a word you could use to describe it, if that's what you wanted to go for.
There you go. And then the other side of that coin was, you were talking about the Android architecture components and stuff. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? What's so good about them?
Well, historically, Android have, like I said before, they've basically said, here's some tools, do what you want with them. And even when pushed to go, okay, what is Google's prescribed method of doing things, they've been really resistant to do anything. They've basically come out recently and said, okay, you've been asking us, we are now going to deliver a prescribed way of doing things in terms of app architecture and lifecycle management stuff. And they've said on top of that, we're going to take all our fragmented libraries and stuff that have been building up over the time. We're going to polish them all up. We're going to put them together, and we're going to bring in these components to help you develop faster in the prescribed manner we want. So to be honest, if you don't want to do it in that manner, there's certain areas of that's just completely wasted to you. But to be honest, I think the quality of the tools that you're offering, it would be silly to resist it, to be honest. So again, it's just like bringing them into the app's been really a fun time to do. As you know, since we brought Kotlin and Jetpack APIs into our library, we've cut the code base down by say 20-30%.
Yeah.
It's a lot cleaner, tests are running a lot more efficiently. It's just been a much needed bit of house cleaning, I think.
Absolutely. And on that point, I'm not sure if people know about this. There's a tool out there, a terminal tool called Clock, C-L-O-C.
Yep.
And we actually did a clock run of our entire code base. So it basically counts the number of lines in a certain language.
It's literally what it stands for.
Yeah.
Count lines of code.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, count lines of code. Nice. So we did before and after the sort of changeover, and I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, we dropped by 50% in
certain areas.
Sort of lines of code.
I think it was more 30% in total, but yeah, certain areas there was a 50% drop.
Very cool. And we are 100% Kotlin now?
100% Kotlin? I was going to say touch word, but there's no word to touch. I believe so, yeah, on last count. Obviously, some of the libraries that we're still dependent on are still using Java.
Yeah.
But to swing back to pros of Kotlin, the interoperability of it just makes that non sequitur, really. Obviously, the iOS equivalent would be making Swift interoperable with Objective-C, which we know is a little bit tricky.
Oh, is that difficult, is it?
Yeah, just ask Joe Ricardo.
Okay, right.
You can get them on for your next thing.
Yeah, right, there you go. Future interviews. What advice would you give anybody in becoming a new developer, not just Android specific? What advice would you give somebody that wants to get into the dev world?
Be sure it's something that you think will keep you engaged long term.
Okay.
Because I've seen a lot of this. People that I went to university with, people I've worked with early on, you can get quite a bit of burnout. So programming can be a really engaging a way to make money. It's definitely a really engaging hobby and pastime to a lot of people. But when that translates over to what you are going to be doing for your career, and actually working in industry, being a programmer can be quite different to spending a few hours on an evening working on a project that you're a big fan of. You need to make sure that you are going to be happy in that environment. So, for example, right, you've got your hobby project, you're working on it, it's all interesting, you're completely leading it, and then you might go to work on an enterprise project where you're working on a very small subcomponent. Where you might not even be, while you're working on it, very clear how that fits into the wider project. Especially early on when you come into them as a job, as an industry, starting your early days of your careers, you're going to be doing very small subcomponents. Might not be very interesting. Doesn't really see the big picture kind of thing. Now, if you find pleasure in getting that small, interesting little task and finding the best, interesting way to solve that, then great. Then that's you're going to be able to get past that early days of the career of like it probably not feeling quite like it was when you were learning to develop. But if you think you are going to come into there and you're going to be completely in charge of the entire scopes of projects from day one. I've seen a lot of people where it's just like they just didn't find the satisfaction in those little jobs that they did when they were coming from like the hobbyist angle.
Okay, fair enough. Is there a particular differentiation in a skill ability that you need for Android? So if I'm a generic dev and an Android dev, what's the difference there? Is there any particular skills I need?
It's like less of an issue now, but I would say like specific things early days with phones as well, and it's something that should still definitely be considered, but less so big of an issue, is the fact that you're working on a limited device.
Okay.
So you have a finite amount of memory to work with, you have finite processing speed, you want to be conscious of how much energy you're using in terms of battery life and stuff, and you want to be making sure that you're not unwittingly like exposing like security issues or anything like that.
Yeah.
Again, though, these are statements that are becoming quite dated now because like my latest phone's as powerful as my laptop.
Yeah, that's
so
nuts.
it's like it doesn't really think that it's not going to something works forward. OS updates are constantly looking to plug security issues. Mainly that's because of unscrupulous developers that are like they're on this straight away. They're stuffing stuff in the app store that's literally just a nonsense app just to be able to expose and manipulate these security flaws.
Right.
So these are sections in the industry that are active and are constantly being updated and moving away for. But especially in the early days of like app development, these were really important. You couldn't have like long running processors that were going to eat up hundreds of megabytes of memory because you would pretty quickly be hitting a brick wall.
Yeah.
Especially in Android, which isn't quite as efficient with its memory usage as Apple is. I'm trying to think any other specific skill sets.
If I may jump in on your point about sort of performance, basically making sure you're not going over certain limits and whatnot. Is there anything that you do currently in your app? Where you work here at Shop Direct, is there anything you do in the app at the moment to ensure those sort of things?
Yeah. So another benefit of Android Studio is you have a really good suite of profiling tools now. So you can quite easily jump on and see what kind of processor your usage you're using, memory usage. There's some great stuff coming from Google Play pre-launch reports as well now, where it uses device farms and just runs a load of random tests on your devices and feeds back some quite good reports. That'll let you know about like
what was that called? Sorry, just for
pre-launch support from Google Play.
Cool.
That will give you all kinds of accessibility and usage reports back, but part of that will talk about like if it thinks you're using excessive resource at any time, battery use and stuff like that.
Nice. And of course, for the viewers at home are dying to know, what phone do you have?
I have a Pixel 3, which I very recently smashed the screen in, so I will be getting a Pixel 4 on launch day, I imagine.
Conveniently smashed the screen.
Conveniently smashed the screen.
Conspiracy.
It was a drunken flambeau. So I choose personally to stick with vanilla implementations of Android. Again, something Google are trying to improve on, but like the uptake rate for major new OS releases on like third-party phones can be pretty slow. It can be even like a year or more on certain platforms. And I'm impatient. So when something new's out, I like to have it. If I'm going to have it, I want to have it quick.
Nice. Especially
when it comes to like the industry I'm working in. Again, as you know, but the vast majority of the users of the app that we work on are actually Samsung users, and that's pretty common across the board, to be honest. So as an Android developer, it's obviously a good point to make that you should make sure that you are doing testing on the devices that your customers are using. There's no point doing all your development on vanilla implementations of Android if like that's what your users are using.
Absolutely. And in fact, you give me a lovely little segue there into testing as a theme. How do you test in Android? What do you do about testing?
I throw a load of code down and then I give a build to someone else to make sure it's not broken. No, so there's a lot of talk if you read any of the literature around our industry and stuff like that about best practices for testing and stuff. We tend to do, I don't even know what the actual phrase would be, lazy testing after the fact. So we'll develop a feature and then we will write the test for it once it's finalized. The environment, obviously, that's because of the environment we work in. A lot of the times when we're starting to approach development of a feature, it's still very experimental, so it doesn't really open up to using TDD. I guess that we're more of a BDD kind of platform, so that's like testing based around the behavior of your users, rather than proactive like testing upfront, writing your code to pass tests. There's a hot debate about which is better. I think it's more on a more specific to your circumstances. So yeah, but what do we do, right? So we write a code, we supply some unit tests, some implementation tests where appropriate.
How are these written? Sorry, the unit tests and implementation tests.
What language? Or
Like
okay,
frameworks,
so
languages.
we just use core JUnit for our unit tests. We use Keto and Hamcrest for mocking our dependencies and doing our tests around that. So we will break down our components as thoroughly as possible. We can talk about architecture a little bit in a minute, I think. And wherever possible, we are testing units of functionality in the unit tests. And then we use instrumentation tests when we need to test stuff that's going to interact directly with Android lifecycle or Android OS components.
Right.
The main difference there being if you are writing... by default, at least, if you are writing code, you're testing code that needs to interact with an Android OS, you have to run it inside an Android environment. So it has to be running on an emulator or on a device.
Why?
That's just because that's where you execute the Android lifecycle. So the counter to that obviously is we're currently looking at integrating RoboElectric into our applications, and that will basically create an entire Mock's not specific, but basically a virtual Android environment that you can run your tests in. That allows you to run your tests as a unit test, which basically means you can run them locally on a machine inside a JVM rather than having to run it on a specific device, which obviously is a lot faster.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the best way to learn Android development? How do I learn it? What do I do?
Do some. There's very low barriers to entry. There we go. There's very low barriers to entry when it comes to Android. There's no initial cost. It's very easy to set up a device to be able to build onto. You can just download Android Studio. There's wizards to get up and running, and you can literally dive straight into it. As far as actual getting an understanding of the platform, there's lots of ways. I'll give a shout out to Ray Wenderlich. Or Wendelich, whatever, great website. They have definitely helped me when I was learning just the Android basics. But now I tend to stick to Android documentation. Android do some great code labs where they will literally walk you through every step of being able to implement a feature, and even like setting up the environment and stuff to get it going in there.
Very cool.
And that's a step-by-step process, and you can just download the code at any point, if something starts to go wrong, so you can see how your codes come out in sync with theirs.
Awesome. Just to interject, we'll put the links in the description down below to those links to Ray Wenderlich and the Code Lab stuff that you were talking about.
And we are not on commission with Ray, but buy his books. I'm trying to think what other real sources. Engagement, there's a pretty good community out there. If you want to talk to people, just like even like on the Google bug report pages, you can get deep dive chats into people. Open source communities, share projects, get involved. The trickiest thing you're going to learn if you're coming from it from not knowing how to program at all, that's a much trickier question.
Sure.
If you're coming from it as a programmer that wants to do a little bit of Android dev, you just need to get your head around the lifecycle and the OS specifics. And once you got that down, it's really easy to develop for, I'd say.
Brill. Actually, on that, the Fragmented podcast, of course, I'll link to those down below as well. They've done their recent episode was about whether you should learn Java or Kotlin sort of first, as your first approach, whether you should come into Java or Kotlin. I just wanted to get your take on it. Kotlin, out the box, just like brand new Kotlin.
What did Fragmented say?
They said, they gave their fluffy answer of, it's up to you, it's how it... But they sort of said that Kotlin was the... they sort of said that Kotlin was the, their sort of answer, but they also said it's up to you specifically. But
Yeah, just I'd say Kotlin, especially if you come into Android development and you want to know what language. So Google have obviously made Kotlin the primary language for the entire platform. All new APIs are being written in Kotlin. They're doubling down on Kotlin, maybe because of legal reasons, which we won't bother getting into because there's a whole thing going on with like Java, Oracle, and Android, and basically it's costing them a lot of money. So yeah, you can see why they would make that decision to go. But yeah, if you just come in as a Java developer, though, it's still perfectly legitimate to develop Android with Java. There's no functional difference. You can do everything just the same. It's just like I say, the code's a bit more pleasant to write in Kotlin, I find personally.
Right. So to close out the video, I'm going to ask Graham just a very quick couple of quick-fire questions that are single-word answers. You ready?
Sure.
Here we go. Marshmallow or pie?
Oh Jesus, pie.
OS suite names or OS numbers?
Sweet names.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Toilet paper over or under?
Ooh, over.
And then a big final question that I want you a little bit of an explanation with it is: would you fight 10 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck?
Okay, I'm gonna go. We're presuming that like bite force scales with size.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go 10 duck-sized horses.
Okay. How would you approach that?
I mean, one duck-sized horse, that thing can bite you in half, right? It's gonna break some bones.
No,
and how I would fight that, I would run in circles, just wave my arms, going, "Stop, get away from me!" Something like that.
Smart.
But at a manlier tone of voice, like, "Stop, get away from me."
Of course, that makes sense, yeah. So, first of all, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to Graham for being part of this. Thank you very much, mate.
It was horrific.
Thank you, good, I'm glad. And of course, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and of course, subscribe to the channel. We'll put a little button there between his hands. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this content. Of course, ring the bell icon. Do a little bell somewhere.
Ding, ding.
There it is. Ring the bell icon, of course, to be notified about new videos as they come out. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. I'm ready.
Here you go. So people that watch YouTube videos, right, know where the subscribe button is.
What is something that you...